Welcome to the Techstory podcast, where storytellers kibitz about technology that makes us go, what's that about? Now introducing your host, Doug Thompson.
In this episode of the Techstory podcast, I get to talk to Jules White, author, TEDx speaker, and just a wonderful person. She's been on the Dragon's Den at the BBC, the equivalent of a Shark Tank over here in the U.S., and she has a great book, her Live It, Love It, Sell It program, and we're sort of kindred spirits, maybe separated in another life, but we both have a great philosophy. In this episode, we talk about her TEDx experience, we talk about her time at the Dragon Den, and we just talk about how to tell stories to sell things. It'll be great, and I hope you love Jules as much as I do. Hey everybody, welcome to Techstory again, and I am so pleased to invite the friend of mine. She's one of my longer time friends and connections here on LinkedIn, Ms. Jules White.
Hello, Doug.
How
lovely to be here.
It's such a nice little prim and proper way to introduce yourself with that. But just she's the author of Live It, Love It, Sell It, which is really my philosophy on life. That's sort of how we met. Was our philosophies on sales was very much the same, and you were able to put it down in ink. And because I think we connected when you were having your book launch. It was right around that time, I believe.
Yeah, it was, and it was really early on of my book journey. Definitely, I'm sure that I was 1st of October 2018. I launched my book, so I think it might have even been a little bit before that, and you were just cheerleading me through. And then, of course, you very kindly read the book, which is amazing when anyone takes time to do that. And so, yeah, we're very, very aligned, I think, on the way we think about this stuff.
Yeah, I thought when I was reading, I said it was like, okay, this is like my sister that has known me all my life, and because sales is it's a wonderful thing to be, although it has a bad reputation from people that, like everything else, you have bad players that do it. But the true art of doing this is not, sales is kind of a transactional word, in that actually it's I've got something of value to you that will help you out that you're willing to pay for. And it's sort of a symbiotic relationship and all that. And, I've talked to people, and we can get into this later. I mean, it's sort of the good, the bad, the UHP. That's the new thing on this one, in which you'll explain that to me, I'm sure, along the way. So other than writing books and being such a prim and proper Englishwoman, I'll get that right in a minute. What do you do?
In my business, I help people to fall in love with sales, and I guess that's the line that I throw out there, Doug, because it sounds far more interesting than saying I'm a coach, I'm a trainer. But I love people. I have all my life, and I had this philosophy, methodology, whatever you want to call it, around sales, as you've just mentioned, where I don't want it to be transactional, yucky and pushy and icky, which is what most people feel. So what I do is I help people to really sell as uniquely them, and I get them to really relax into who they are, instead of feeling like sales is this forbidden, fear-ridden place to go. So actually you love what you do and you're passionate about it, so go tell the world, and it's almost that in a sentence, but with a lot more detail. We go into a lot of depth through my programs, one-to-one coaching as well as group coaching, and I'm just going to be launching probably this might be after I've launched, but I'm now creating a membership so that people can actually be with me all the time.
Well, sign me up, because that's something I definitely want to be a part of on that one. I'll be your first. Yeah. I'll be your first one. I'll be the Gold Club member with that. So you're also a TEDx speaker. That's another connection we have.
Yeah, and we must mention that. Yours was wonderful. I was delighted to watch yours, and mine was very much by me being in the right place at the right time, I have to tell you. But I was very honored to be able to have a TEDx.
Well, that's an interesting part of the story to go, and I'm going to ask that one question at the end of this now, since we sort of got on that. How did that happen? How did because like I went through the application process, and I talked to somebody the other day that's applied 200 times, and and I think she has a wonderful story. I was like, wow. Yeah. How fortunate am I to get it on like my 4th or 5th try? And you didn't. You told me this story before, and I think it's great.
I did. And I was speaking at another event down in Brighton on the south coast in the UK. And it was a small event. And at that event was the curator for TEDx Brighton. Now, that's one of our biggest TEDx's in the UK. There's 1,600 people come to it. It's a beautiful theatre, the Brighton Dome. He listened to my talk that day in this really small hotel room for 60 people. And then I bought tickets to go and watch TEDx in Brighton because I met him for the first time. We chatted a little bit, and I didn't do the whole, I really want a TEDx, please. Can I have a TEDx? I really intentionally didn't do that.
You didn't sell him?
But
you didn't sell him?
I didn't sell him at all. And so we connected and just chatted actually quite generally. And then 7 days before TEDx Brighton, I got a message from him, and he put, "You've got 7 days, are you in?" And I said, "I'm sorry."
Yeah,
I said,
I mean, what?
To the right. Yeah, what is this? He said, "Do you want a TEDx talk?" He said, "I've had a lady has actually dropped out. She's very poorly. And I couldn't think of anyone else I wanted to ask." And so on this text is my invitation to do a TEDx at one of the UK's and Europe's biggest TEDx talks. And there I was 7 days later, stood on the stage in the Brighton Dome.
That's fantastic. I mean, I went through I think it was several months of panic and rewriting and all these other things that went on,
Yeah.
and the problem that I have with it is that it's such a confined, it was the scariest experience I think I've had in years. It did remind me of when I talk to people about public speaking, they tell me that it scares them. And, I've been doing this for 20 odd years, and I've long forgotten that fear that could come up until I had to go stand in this 6-foot circle and tell a story that was, it's like, wow, I understand that fear again. It put me back in touch with it. How you've got other histories of lions. I mean, you're just a TV star. You're just, rock star all over the place. So how did you feel with that? I mean, you have 7 days. One, that's a lot of time pressure to get this down to where you've got 12 to 15 minutes to tell your story.
Yeah.
And so how did you work through that?
Well, you mentioned about, I've actually been on Dragon's Den in the UK, which is your Shark Tank equivalent, I think. And that was quite some years ago. Now, I had 2 weeks to do that, Doug. So it seems to be a pattern here. I think I work really well under pressure. And I felt a bit like, well, I'm going to tell my story. So there's the first thing. So I know what that is. So you can over prepare sometimes, but I know what that journey and story looked like. I'd got 14 minutes. That was our rule on our TEDx. And I then knew that I needed to take the audience on a journey. So that was the bits I knew. And so I decided where the story needed to start in order to then do that and connect to the audience. And I did nail it, as we say in the UK, which was great. But it was one of those fly by the seat of your pants thing, Doug. I've got to be honest. It wasn't a massive prep. I didn't prepare for ages. I only had 7 days.
Well, yeah, you couldn't over prepare in that time. Maybe that was my problem. I had too long to think about this because it was.
Yeah, and I think I would have been worse if I'd had like this endless time to prepare it. I think I'm not sure how that would have been for me.
Yeah, you do. Now that you mentioned it, I did overthink it, and I kept redoing and kept, the problem, one of the problems I have is when I tell a story, I put a lot of color and texture in it, which takes up time, takes up space. For me, it makes a richer story because you're telling about sort of the wallpaper or the background of these other things, which I like, because then if you have a listener that has no frame of reference, it draws them in even more when you're doing this. But if you got 12 minutes, which is time we had, man, you're throwing stuff overboard. You barely got a boat by the time you're done with it to sail.
It's so true. For me, it was like, what bits of the story can I leave out? And that was hard because it was like, well, actually, that all links to that next bit, which links to that. And so if I miss that, they're going to lose the impact of that. So that was the tough bit, I think.
Yeah.
But I did have to précis it down. I was talking about quite a few years of my life in 14 minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot of fast forwarding.
Yeah, a lot of fast forwarding to hopefully the most emotionally connecting bits that I could bring.
Well, I loved your talk as well, and I didn't miss any of the pieces in there, so you did an excellent job of the editing.
Thank
with that.
you.
And I guess that's the art of it is we as the artist or the storyteller, we know in our mind all the richness that comes with it and everything else. It's like J.K. Rowling probably had this whole wizarding world of Harry Potter in her mind and all that. And now, how do you put that into words, realizing that everybody that reads it will interpret it a little bit differently? So, there's an art into creating it where it's specific enough that you can get to the destination, but there's also enough flexibility where that individual can make it their own, right?
Yeah, and I think the other piece is not just the words and the story, but actually you.
Mm-hmm.
And so then how much the audience buys into you and your
Right.
authenticity. And I meet people, actually, I know that people are going to think I'm just saying this, but when I first met you on Zoom, because that's where the only place we've ever met so far, there was this instant connection.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I'd known you for ages. So that was that lovely, endearing connection we had.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get that from your audience when you're on stage. And
Yeah.
and the key is to be very, very true
Mm-hmm.
to who you are.
Yeah.
And when you've really relaxed into that, that's when I think magic really happens.
No,
Personally.
you bring up a good point. And I think it's, if you let your guard down, if you're totally transparent with who you are, that lets them in. That allows that energy, because it's this unseen energy. And that's the thing I miss most about, talking to people in public, is there's that energy exchange that you get that you don't get. I mean, you can see a little bit of facial. I mean, there's a little bit of it through here. It's a little bit breathing through a mask.
Exactly.
You can see the eyes, and hopefully you can see the eyes smiling. But you get that energy exchange, and you only get that if you're open and you're transparent and you honestly, you're sharing from your soul.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot of people say to me as well, things like, well, two things. They say, oh, I don't have a story. I mean, you must have heard that one, Doug, and that always makes me smile because I think, oh, you so have. You just don't perhaps know how to find it. And the other thing that people say is, but I don't really want to share everything. And of course, you don't have to share everything.
Right.
It's about just sharing what you feel you want to share,
Mm-hmm.
in this true way. So it's quite interesting, isn't it?
It is, and I don't know. I talk to people. Simon still lives in my head. He comes and visits me and keeps me in check on a regular basis. If you don't know who that is, you need to go watch my TED Talk. But he revisits me, and I have to get friends and people like you that know from the outside, because I get that too. I'll get that. Well, I'm not remarkable. I don't have anything special. Because it usually comes in when you get to that comparison type thing where you look at the journey that some of these people have done. They fought off near death experiences, or they've a learning disability. I mean, they're so powerful to have. That if I reflect back on my life, it seems a bit unremarkable to go on. So to me, if I get in that comparison mode, which Simon likes to put me in, it's really hard to see what your story is. And I think that's what happened. A lot of people I talk to, that's because I can see from the outside what their story is, and through talking to them and the other things. But yeah, your inner bully puts up that roadblock, and you says you don't have anything unique.
No, that's so true. It's definitely an internal thing, isn't it? This, I call it comparisonitis, Doug. Like it's a disease, and it happens in business as much as speaking, as much as life, actually. I guess it goes right through everything. But a lot of my clients will say, oh, but my competitors do this, and my competitors are watching what I'm doing, and I say, well, that's great.
Yeah.
But they can't do it like you because they're not you. And again, This is where UHP kind of started to kick in, actually. That's what got me thinking. So I don't know whether we want to maybe even talk about that.
You were leading me to where I wanted to go.
But I guess, anyone who's been trained in sales, and I think young or old, we will have heard of USP, unique selling proposition, because it's a big thing, isn't it? We're trained. It's how we differentiate ourselves. And I got thinking about this, and I thought, actually, it's now so noisy. We're online. We can Google anything we like. We're so much more knowledgeable. Does USP really work anymore the way it used to? And of course, I don't think it does as it used to. So then I thought, what's special about us then to differentiate ourselves? And of course, it's us. So I created the unique human proposition, which of course then becomes my UHP, which just gets you thinking about your greatest asset, which is you, because you are different. No one can do it like Doug.
No,
No one.
you're exactly right. I mean, we're all sort of given these talents, which are all sort of mishmashed into a different order, right, in magnitude that you have. And when you're selling things, if much like when you're on stage and you're telling the story, if you truly believe in what you're selling, then that comes through. That's that invisible energy that comes through, and say there's another person, we work for the same place and we're both selling sort of the same product to different customers.
Yeah.
As we each tell that story, it's going to hit the listener into a different place at the same time, because we're all selling our unique spin on, even though it could be the same service, but it's unique spin. And that's what makes some people, like, they may not like the way that I do it, but they would love the way that you do it. But that's because they have that connection, right? And everybody loves what I do, but they prefer yours over mine. We'll just say.
Everybody loves what you do, Doug.
But
it's true. So, if you think about particularly, I think sales teams, and having been a head of sales, sort of leading a team, one of the things we were doing is we were all doing the same thing. We were all pushing for the same target. It was all target KPI driven. And suddenly when we weren't hitting that target, Doug, we started to sort of look, oh my goodness, well, what do we do now? And then they chucked me in as a head of sales because our other guy was on his way out. And they just left me to it, literally just threw me to the lions. And I just thought, I've got 14 people here and they're all different. And they've all got different skills and they've all got different personalities. So I worked on every bit of that. And suddenly the team came alive. And suddenly the team each individual had a value. And then they were selling in their own unique way. Oh my goodness, it was mind blowing. And after 12 months, 18 months, because there was a 6-month lead to sale at this particular company, we were smashing our target, Doug. We were hitting it, overachieving it, but we were never chasing just the money. We were selling as uniquely us.
Yeah, and that's what I like to tell people. Like, if I'm doing I've had a quota and we've had these other things. That's just part of the metric of success or what you're trying to do. But I've always been to think is if I'm doing everything correctly, if I'm connecting with the customer and I'm giving them value and all that, the number takes care of itself, right? So
Exactly.
I too many people are they do it the other way around, where they're focused on this number. So you'll do some unnatural things. Maybe you'll do some things that you don't necessarily believe in 100%. And the worst thing that can happen is that when I've delivered something to a customer and it doesn't meet their expectations, then I've done a very poor job, and I would almost rather take the money back. Say, hey, look, this is not a good fit. This was all my fault for giving you something that wasn't right.
Yeah.
So
I think that the other thing that I saw was the fact that the target-driven focus had just reduced these guys to their knees, Doug. They had no energy. They had no life in them, no belief.
Mm-hmm.
It was really sad because they were really amazing people in their own right, and so to see them come to life, the other aspect of that human aspect of it was really wonderful. It really was.
What did you, in that environment where they turned around, what did you celebrate from that? And the reason I'm asking is, a lot of times you'll ring a bell or do something if you've made, does the other things. But that's celebrating the number, the metric.
Yeah.
I'll bet you did something different.
Yeah, we did. So every month we would meet as a team, religiously. That was our monthly sales meeting. And I also put a screen into the office so everyone could see the targets. So it was a visual.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't discuss them. We didn't talk about them. They weren't the center of everything. So we talked about what wins we'd had, but actually what customers were saying. What was the best practice?
Mm-hmm.
What conversations had we had? What was coming out of why customers came to us and bought our product? And that stuff was all the human stuff.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous. And then we would celebrate what we were all good at as individuals, as
Mhm.
opposed to what target and numbers we'd hit.
Yeah.
It was really lovely. I had little funny awards and all sorts. I made it lots of fun, but we never took our eye off the target
Mhm.
because it was always on that screen.
Mhm.
So that was important. It was there. We knew we had to do something with it. And this thermometer based visual
Mhm.
used to just keep going up and up and up.
Mhm.
So the whole nature of it just became a real team effort.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
I think
It
probably
really.
in a lot of those type things, if you so you looked at that as people started again using their UHP to do what they want to do, they'd look at that, and when you're at the end of the day, you don't want to make that one more call, you don't want to do this other thing, because we're all sort of running out of energy. You look at that and say, look, I can't let my team down. I need to go do that. And that's where having that target out there that gives you that little extra motivation to go do the thing that I'm just too tired to do.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It did. And, when you think about psychology, I'm so fascinated by psychology. I definitely should have done something like a psychology degree if I could have been bothered, Doug. But I love thinking about how people work, and you just saw it there in that whole example of how they stepped up, how
Hmm.
they changed, how they came to life, how they worked as a team, everything about it. Because the drivers were different.
Hmm.
That's all it was. It was just a slight change in the drivers and the focus. Um, and it was amazing. And so everything on my UHP program now and the content I deliver in this business is based on everything we did in that team,
Hmm.
which is great, because I know it worked. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, and if you'd have been a psychologist, the world would have lost out on one of the best salespeople on the planet. So I'm glad you didn't
Thank you,
choose that.
Doug.
Glad you didn't choose that path. That's all we need is another psychologist. I just lost. Well, I
Oh.
didn't lose any of my audience because they don't want. They think, oh, you're a nutcase. So, so tell us about your dip into the lion's den. Was it the dragon's den? Dragon's
Yeah,
den. Lion's den.
Dragon's
I'm
Den.
still stuck back in. I don't know the dragon's den. How
But
did that come about? Because that's another. Again, you had 2 weeks to prepare for it, so that's an eternity for you. How'd that come about?
Yeah, that was a long time. Well, I just had my son, so it's 2005. It was a long time ago, and I decided I didn't really want to go back to work like I had been. I wanted to be with him, so I thought, well, I'll start a business because that's what you do when you've got a 3-month-old baby. Um, but the business was all around baby products. So we would do parties in the UK. We had Party Plan. I think you've had it in the US or you have it. So we had Tupperware,
Yeah.
underwear, you name it. You could buy it at parties, but you couldn't buy baby products. No one was doing it. I was like, that's stupid because somebody needs to do this. So of course I did. So I started Truly Madly Baby, which was this Party Plan business selling baby products. And then mums could do this and do the parties, take baby with them, and then they could make money and still be mum. So it was like this lovely idea. Then I saw a thing on my computer that said we're looking for applicants for Dragon's Den, and it was early days of a second series. So I just applied. I literally applied and I laughed and joked. And the same day the television called me, and then 2 weeks I was in front pitching for my investment in my business.
Did you know any of these people outside of this? I mean, did they have a reputation? Like here we have Mark Cuban who owns, the Dallas Mavericks, and they all are bigger than life. We all know who they are. Who they are.
Yeah, yeah. They were all fairly big celebrity business people. If you knew anything about business, you knew who they were. Have you heard of Peter Jones? You might have done. He's probably the most famous.
Hmm.
And he's still a dragon today on the episodes that we still show in the UK. And he was the one who invested in me. So the reason why it's easy to still talk about is it's still on the television and he's still a dragon. So I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But I never took the money. Doug. We never did the deal. For various reasons, the contract wasn't great. But I went on to run the business for three more years, really successfully.
Well, but still, you still sold it to them. So how
Yes.
did you overcome that fear of, because even as old as I am, inside I'm still like 12 years old. So I go
Me too.
I go meet somebody that's the CEO of this company, and it's like, wow. I mean, and I'm older than they are. I still get this this envy factor and stuff that comes up. How did you overcome that? Because I'm sure you had to have a little bit of that. Oh man, these people have, lost more money than I'll ever make in my life type things.
Yeah, I think the first thing was I walked in there expecting absolutely nothing, but I just walked back out with nothing. So I almost had nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely my attitude. But the second part of it was I absolutely 100% believed in what I was doing. I was completely sold, totally passionate, completely Jules. And I think I Julesed them, because this is
That's a verb
UHP
now?
again, it's a word, yeah. I just gave them completely me, and this is why this is a great idea. And yet I'd been running it for 2 months. I had no turnover in it. There was no good predictions. I could reel my numbers, but they weren't really on point. And they bought me, and that's a fact, because they had nothing else to buy, Doug. So they obviously saw my passion for what I was proposing, and that's what I think sparked them off.
Well, and I think that's true. If you're selling your UHP or you're using it, people buy it, even if they're buying a product or service from you, they're still buying you because again, as you said, the internet's the buyer's very educated about the product anymore. We're simply a vehicle to, I look at, we're sort of that last mile where we're trying to tie in. Here's how this will uniquely help you solve your unique problem. So we're sort of, in the technology piece, that's where we're at. But as a coach or something, here's the services that here's Jules, right? Here's how Jules can help you overcome that, can help you get your team up, and I think that's the vibe that comes through.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the old adage, isn't it, really, Doug? People buy people. As corny as that sounds, I honestly not sure that's ever going to change. It's just our human nature, isn't it? We trust that gut in that first few seconds.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
caveman stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is caveman stuff, very much. Yeah,
yeah.
It's it's unfortunate though that some people are such good. You have the cons and you have the other things that some people. If you look at it from the outside and in the rearview mirror, it's easy to see. Well, how did you not see that happen? But they were so good. I mean, and they're almost pathological at this point in time, I'm pretty sure, because they have to believe what they're doing or they couldn't come across the way that they do as convincing they do. They actually have to be able to have a belief that what they're doing is true. Then as they step out of it, it's like an actor and a character. The best actors get in and they're living that part. Sometimes they live it too much in it, like Heath Ledger and stuff, and it turns out badly. But it's and those are the ones that give sales a bad name. Getting back into that, so if you can come across as Jules, then your guard's down, and you're honestly, I would buy anything that you're selling for me because I know that if you're telling me the story about it, that it's true, that you honestly believe it, and that's something that money can buy, I guess.
Do you know, that's really special as well for me that you say that, because one of my core values is integrity, so that's really important to me, that that's how you feel about me. And, that whole bad reputation in sales, you're absolutely right, is from those salespeople who haven't really walked the walk the way they should have done. They might have been successful and reaped the rewards, but they will have probably bounced around company to company to company. And not had much longevity, and eventually ran out of places to go.
Yeah.
Now that's almost like being on the run, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't think I wanted to ever be a salesperson on the run.
No.
I wanted to have a good reputation as a salesperson. So sometimes I might not do a deal because it wasn't the right deal, to the detriment of me, because my boss would probably kick my bum. But I always knew that the business I did had to be good business. That was right from the off.
Well, and a company can't go on if they have a whole bunch of those things that we're just selling it to do a number, especially now when, again, there's alternatives around every corner for things. And now as you get to things that's more of a service as opposed to a fixed product, it's an ongoing relationship. And if you mess that up by selling them something, misrepresenting it or doing something like that, you may never recover that customer. And there's other people out there more than willing to fill in that gap.
Yeah. Plus what they'll say about you to all the other people who could have been your customers, it's the ripple effect that's also quite dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is. So I usually start with this, and you seem to have a good one teed it up. What's your favorite tech story?
Well, there was a whole tech thing happened to me recently, Doug, and I died on my feet, if I could say that. Obviously, not literally to any of the listeners. I started to do a series of webinars during the lockdown of the pandemic because I felt that was a great way to showcase Jules and my thoughts and everything. And I'd got this one now. What was it about? It was about the secret of sales is there's no secret. That was the title of the webinar. So I thought that's cool. So I got all these people signing up. It was great. And I probably had, I reckon 50 to 60 people had signed up, which for me was like my first shot. I was really pleased. About 50 turned up. So we're online and I've practiced this and I've got my Zoom and my slides and everything. And I've got my fingers in the right places because I get really nervous about tech. And we started the presentation, and as I was pressing my button to move my slides, suddenly someone says to me in my ear, "Your slides aren't moving." Well, honestly, from that moment, it was a meltdown because I went into panic mode because every button I pressed, Doug, didn't do anything to my slides. Eventually, I lost my slides, and then I completely lost my slides, and then my audience were just all sitting there. So I said, "Sorry, guys, I just can't do this today because I don't want you to not see this." And they were lovely. They all went off. I made a video straight away, Doug, and put it on LinkedIn saying, "Permission for everybody to fail."
I remember seeing that.
I just did, which was great. I had amazing response. And then the next week I put it on again, and I had 60 people sign up and new people, and about 45 actually turned up, and it was wonderful. So it was a happy ending, but oh my goodness, Doug, it was horrific.
If you're in person, because I've had things melt down in person before. I was doing a presentation, and it was very reliant on the internet, the thing I was going to do, and they didn't bother to tell me that they were going to have their internet serviced that time. So I got like 2 minutes, 3 minutes into the thing, and then it was nothing, but. So, I said, okay, we're going to do some shadow puppets for a while, or we're just going to sit here and talk, and it was one of the best sessions that I had because you could do that because you're in person, you could do this. But if you're in this remote environment and everything has to do with technology and that goes south, you can't even do shadow puppets. So it's sort of tough.
I think that's so important though to say, because in life, if I'd been live, I would have breezed it, Doug. I would have breezed it because I would have thought of something and I would have entertained them for 20 minutes. But I had nowhere to go. I was trapped in this little box, really embarrassed that I was failing every time I pressed a button. So
technology purgatory. So that's a great story, and it's a lesson that you can recover from it, and you did the right thing. It was almost therapy for you. Because it's a great topic to talk about. You have permission to fail. I just did it. I mean, that's just brilliant.
It had a great response, that post. It was lovely. Very, very supportive connections I have. So I'm very blessed. Well,
we've all been there. And if we're not, there's two types of people. There's the people who've had technology failure and those that are about to. So
yeah, that's so true.
It's that is the thing. So it's been wonderful catching up with you again on this one. How can people get a hold of you? What's the best way?
I think LinkedIn is always a great place, Doug, as you know. So I'm obviously Jules White, and I'm sure you'll have a link. I can send you the links.
We'll put all that stuff in the show notes.
But if you put "live it, love it, sell it" into anywhere, you'll find me somewhere, because it's kind of the brand I live by. So I've got it on all of my channels. And I've also got one link that takes you to all of them. And again, I might send you that, Doug, if that's okay.
That'd be great. Yeah.
But yeah, do connect with me. I'd love that.
She's a pleasure to talk to, pleasure to connect with, and read her book. It's a wonderful book. I just connected with it so much because she could do it in her voice because I talked to her before we had the voice, so I could actually have Jules narrate it to me in my head. It was actually pretty cool. There's a lot of things that go on in my head that was a cool one though. So Jules, thanks a lot again for hanging in there with me, telling us your tech story and telling us all your your unique human proposition.
Proposition.
Proposition, not preposition. That's the English class, of which I obviously failed. UHP, unique human proposition, of which yours is very unique and just wonderful. So thanks a lot for sharing that with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Doug.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Techstory podcast. And it would really be helpful if you would go out to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast and rate it. Give it a 5-star because it helps other people find the podcast. It really raises the visibility, and it would mean the world to me if you would do that.